and I'll ask Alex Kennedy the same question. Up to this point, before last night, was LeBron James a Miami Heat or a Cleveland Cavalier? When you said LeBron James, who did you associate him with? I think after last night, there's no question you associate him with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Alex, how are you, pal?
Hey, doing well. How are you?
Doing real well. Great game last night. In the first 6, maybe didn't give us much, but it was worth waiting for that. And, in the end for me, if you were a LeBron hater or whatever, I know they're all out there, but I think last night it's really difficult to really try to conjure up something now. Do you agree that the LeBron stuff should probably be put to rest?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that throughout his career, he's done a really good job of silencing those critics. And, first it was that, he couldn't win a championship, and then, he did it in Miami. Then it was that he couldn't carry a team. And then really whenever Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh kind of broke down and, slowed down, he showed that he could do that. Then it was that he wasn't clutch. He, stepped up in numerous big games and fourth quarters to carry his teams. And now, people say he couldn't do it in Cleveland and carry this team and couldn't do it without Dwayne Wade or Pat Riley. But like you said, I think now he's forever going to be associated with the Cavaliers and as a Cavalier, remembered as a Cavalier. This helps his legacy so much, doing it in Cleveland and breaking that drought and doing what he promised he was going to do. And it's not just that he did it. If he had a bad series, I'm sure the haters would have been talking about that, and, we'd be hearing a lot. But to average 29.7 points, 11.3 rebounds, 8.9 assists, 2.6 steals, and 2.3 blocks, and leading every single player on both teams in those categories, I think it's the best finals performance I've seen. It's incredible. And there's no question, I think he's, solidified himself as one of the all-time great players.
You mentioned, and I agree with you, Alex, doing it in Cleveland. To me, I've always joked, if he does it in Cleveland, that's almost like giving him an extra ring. Like, you have 3. No, we're going to give you an extra one for that because of the history there. What to you does winning in Cleveland do for him? I mean, I think that does bring it up a level of this is something that nobody was able to do, and he was able to do that. To me, that is extra special.
Yeah, it's remarkable. I think it's already hard enough to be a small market team and compete with, bigger markets that are going to be more attractive in free agency. Teams like, and we saw that with Miami when he left Cleveland, that, he went to a place with better weather and a larger market. And, players are always going to look at teams like the Lakers, the Knicks, and, we've heard so much about small markets. But to do it in his hometown, in a small market that hasn't won a championship since 1964, is incredible. There was so much pressure on him, and he took all that on, by going back there. He obviously didn't choose to be drafted there, but by going back there, he took that pressure on. It really said that he, made his goal very clear that he was going to win a championship there, and then he was able to do it. It's just such a rare story in sports. I don't think there's many stars in sports that we associate with their hometown. Usually they go to a new team or a new town, and we kind of associate them with, that new city that they're a part of that they didn't either choose or that isn't their hometown. But, from day one, we've always known, Akron, Cleveland, that's, LeBron James' town. To go back there and win a championship and, for it to be Cleveland, that's huge. It's not like, this is a player going back home to Los Angeles or a player going back home to a different city. For it to be Cleveland is huge for that city, and they have every reason to celebrate these next few days and for the rest of the offseason. It's a ridiculous story. It's one of those things that seems like it's straight out of a movie.
Alex Kennedy, the managing editor of BasketballInsiders.com. I hate it when he left for Miami. I don't think he had to leave to do that. Because like I kind of said, you associate the great players with one team, and there was always a question. All right, is he a Heat? Is he a Cav? And I think he ended that last night. But I respected him when he decided to come back. Now, why do you think he came back? I mean, did you think he made a mistake? Do you think he believed that he made a mistake? Why did he ultimately decide to come back to Cleveland? Because let's be honest, if they don't have Kyrie and went out and got, they were horrible for 3 years, so they got some talent. It was almost like he said, look, I got to get out of here so they can be bad enough that they can get talent, and then I'll go back. But he's not going back to Cleveland if they had a bunch of stiffs out there. Why ultimately did he end up going back to go to Cleveland?
Yeah, I mean, I think he went there because he wanted to do this for the city on one hand, but, let's be honest, there were selfish reasons as well. He wanted to raise his kids there. He talked about that, he wanted them to be, in that area, and he was still living in Cleveland, and, he had a home there throughout his time with the Heat. So I think he wanted his family based out of that area. He wanted to return home. And he opened his window for more championships. I think, like I said, we saw that Dwayne Wade was breaking down and Chris Bosh was getting older. And a lot of those guys in that Miami Heat team were getting a lot older. The supporting cast were either retiring or they were past their prime. When you talk about Shane Battier, Ray Allen, Chris Anderson, go down the list, guys that were huge contributors in Miami, those guys were much older, and Dwayne Wade is obviously much older. And then he looked at this Cavs team, the chance to go home, this Cavs team that had Kyrie Irving, who was a young star, Andrew Wiggins at the time, who, he could either played alongside or he knew Kevin Love could come in and be that, third piece, and a very good supporting cast. And then he knew he could kind of go in and help recruit some free agent veterans that would join the team. It definitely, had some selfish motivation too, his decision. I think he wanted to, I think he was looking at his family, and I think, the fact that it was his hometown and he did have a chance to bring a championship there and, apply some of the lessons he learned while in Miami was a huge factor. But I think that opening his championship window, going to a younger, more talented team was certainly a part of it too. Like you said, Cleveland, it's interesting. They kind of screwed up their way into getting LeBron James back if you look at it, because I think, some of the draft decisions they made were crazy. They don't get Andrew Wiggins if they don't miss on, Dion Waiters, Anthony Bennett, Tristan Thompson. So who knows how things play out if, they draft differently or things go differently with Kyrie Irving. But, today, none of that matters. Everything really worked out for Cleveland.
Yeah, and Alex, I guess moving forward, before we dive into a little bit more in this game, you wonder what the future holds for him. I mean, all right, he accomplished, I don't know that if he wins 2 or 3 or 4 championships in Cleveland, that's ever going to change the perception of him there. I think he's already as far and as big as he can be there. So does that lend the possibility of him being done, accomplishing everything he could in his hometown?
I don't think so. Last night he said that he wants to come back and he wants to lead this team. He wants to bring a lot of the same players back. And look, like I said, he opened up his championship window by going there. Kyrie Irving turned 24 years old in March. It's hard to believe that when you see how great he played during this postseason and, this NBA Finals series. But he's 24 years old. Kyrie Irving's not going anywhere. Kevin Love is on a long-term contract, and they're going to try to make things work with him. They have a number of pieces there. Tristan Thompson, who's, still up and coming. They're going to have, room to improve that team. I think he is going to stay in Cleveland, try to win as many championships as he can there. You look at some of the free agency options. I know Stephen A. Smith mentioned Miami and Los Angeles, but how are those situations better than what he has in Cleveland right now? Going out west does not make much sense. The West is brutal, as we saw during these last 2 playoffs. And Miami, they're a team that, like you said, they're going to be linked to LeBron James forever. And, whether he likes it or not, whether he wants to be remembered as a Cav. But I don't think it makes sense to go back to Miami now. I think, if anything, Cleveland has the better squad at this point. So, especially when you look at, Wade's age and free agency status, when you talk about Chris Bosh's health issues, there's not, a whole, there's not a long list of reasons to go back to Miami. So I think staying in Cleveland makes the most sense, especially because he can raise his family there, and that is a big part of it too.
Alex Kennedy's with us. I saw you tweeting about LeBron James and where he fits. An overwhelming amount of your followers say that he is an all-time great top 3. I've always said, look, you could place a guy wherever you want. If you walk down the street and told me top 3, I'm okay with that. 5, okay. But for you, how did last night differentiate from the previous 2 to put him in a different category?
Well, I think it was the fact that he made history by, becoming the first player to ever lead any series of any length in NBA history in points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks. That's amazing. For him to do that in the finals in a 7-game series is amazing. And then for him to lead the first ever comeback from a 3-1 deficit, I thought was incredible too. To win 3 games in a row against this Warriors team that had won 73 games in the regular season is amazing. That's an amazing accomplishment, and I think that really put his accomplishments in perspective, but then also silenced a lot of people that were doubting LeBron. There's some people in my life that have doubted LeBron and not liked some of the things he's done and have really criticized him and every move and everything he does. They find a way to be negative about it. Today, just nothing but positive text messages saying, okay, he won me over. I'm on board now. I get it. I think people see it now. When he didn't just win that series and lead his team 3 straight wins. It was the way he did it by dominating every single stat category.
Hey, look, I will certainly admit, over the years, I did not like him leaving the way that he did. I didn't think he had to go to Miami. Ultimately, he ended up coming back, as I said, that respect that. But people, I think, were just ready to anoint before the accomplishments had actually been accomplished. You know what I mean? Like, hey, yeah, you might think his talent is there to accomplish these things, but let him do it. And I think, I enjoyed watching it so much. Where I likened it to kind of LeBron's the best player. You're a coach. You're always toughest on the kid that has it in him, and you were tough on him. You were tough on him, and because you were tough on him, I think last night was him, kind of saying, hey, you were really tough on me. Thank you, because, boom, this is what you got last night. And I certainly enjoyed watching what I saw last night more than I've watched, him in Miami. Those series didn't pop off the page like last night's win did or this series did the way he played.
And look, I think he had to be humbled. I think that has to be said. When he was younger, he was very cocky, very immature. There's no question about it. I covered him, when he was a rookie, and he, watching him come into the league and kind of mature, it was really interesting because, he was someone that early in his career wouldn't like when other players on his team were getting attention. He wasn't. He had Chosen One tattooed on his back. There's not really a better way to alienate people than anointing yourself as a Chosen One when you're a high schooler. And, a lot of people were annoyed by a lot of his antics, and I totally get it. People have come to me and said, I hate LeBron, here's why, they lay it out. I understand. You can make a pretty good argument for why you don't like him. He anointed himself a Chosen One. He was, the way he left Cleveland the first time when that was his hometown team and had so many fans, rooting for him and pulling for him and looking at him as, one of them, to leave the way he did on national television. I totally get it. But I think, every misstep he's made, he's learned from those mistakes. And I give him so much credit for the way that he's been able to learn from his mistakes, mature, be humbled over the years. And look, this is a guy that has been under the spotlight and, has had so much scrutiny during this, Twitter era and, this era with camera phones and so much 24-hour attention on our athletes and celebrities. It's amazing that, this guy's never really had an off-court issue or controversy. That's amazing to me when you look at our other, big celebrities and athletes. For him to be able to stay out of trouble and be, such a role model, really, even though he's had some of these immature moments, it is amazing to me.
Alex Kennedy, managing editor, basketballinsiders.com. Let's flip the script to Golden State. They're the best team record-wise. They had the unanimous MVP back-to-back. They won the championship last year. What happened to them? I mean, I likened it to Chip Kelly coming into the NFL, catching everybody off guard for a year or two with that offense, but by the third year it was like, all right, we got you a little bit here. Did Cleveland and Oklahoma State, to some extent, figure out a little bit of how to slow them down?
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting way to slow them down. You play their exact same style. You go small. You switch on everything defensively. That's why Tristan Thompson was such a big part of this series, and Kevin Durant, last series, their ability to be able to switch and guard multiple positions and do what Draymond Green's been doing for the last 2 years, really. It was interesting watching these teams kind of change. It was almost like, Golden State figured this out first and had the personnel first to be able to do these things, switching on defense and guarding, positions 1 through 5 with multiple guys, and being able to play small so that they could, have multiple shooters at all times and spread the floor and score threes while their team's scoring twos. They kind of laid out the blueprint, and I think teams learned from it. Cleveland definitely implemented some of the things that they saw from Golden State. Oklahoma City did the same thing. And I think at one point there was a fear, okay, we can't go small against the Warriors. We're not going to beat them with their own style of play. We need to go big and, try to change the style. But at the end of the day, I think teams are learning, okay, with the right personnel, we can go small and we can try to take on Golden State's small lineup. At one point it was called the death lineup. Now I think we're seeing that, they are vulnerable. They are beatable. But there's no question this team, they're going to be back. All their core is locked up except for Harrison Barnes. But this team, really, everyone's coming back, and I'm curious to see how they respond.
No doubt. Give me your opinion and thoughts on Curry, and what do you make of the series he had? And, I mean, here's some of the last possessions over that last 4.5 where they didn't score at all. I mean, you got the MVP of the league, and you can't score in the last 4.5 minutes. Something's not right there. So what is your summary of what we saw from Curry, really the last, 2 series where there wasn't really too many games where he stood out?
Yeah, he was a huge disappointment, I would say. I think part of it, Cleveland deserves credit for the defense that they had. I think Kyrie Irving did a terrific job in this series of, showing on both ends of the floor that, how badly he wanted this and that he was going to, produce maximum effort. And J.R. Smith, I did not think I would be praising J.R. Smith's defense, but he really came in with a, renewed focus on defense and did a really good job. So Cleveland's backcourt, they deserve a lot of credit for the job they did on Curry. And, some of their big men, too, they switched really well on Curry, like I was saying. They were switching, and there were times last night where Tristan Thompson or Kevin Love were guarding Steph Curry, and you'd think that'd be a horrible matchup, but Cleveland's big did a good job. But look, Curry was, he was disappointing. Part of me thinks that he wasn't completely healthy because that Curry just looked so different than, the guy that we saw during the regular season where you didn't want to miss a single possession because he could do something crazy either with his handles or passing, and especially his shooting. We didn't see that Steph Curry during the finals, unfortunately. And I'm not sure if it's the injury. I don't know if it's, the elbow that he banged. Part of me wants to think it's, an injury and it's a health-related thing. But, it's very possible he just didn't show up in the biggest series.
Yeah, it's amazing, too. Here's a team that lost 9 games all year, lost 9 times in the playoffs, twice at home in this series. A lot of crazy things happened. But one guy, too, and I kind of opened up the show with the fact that because LeBron and Cleveland with the drought, that the shot that won it for them, Kyrie, doesn't get a lot of attention here. But how big of a factor was he? And Alex, I picked Cleveland to win in 7. In part was, I said, look, they lost in 6 last year. Their team is significantly better than they were a year ago. I don't know that people were giving Kyrie enough credit.
Yeah, I think you're right. People don't – I think for a while Kyrie was looked at as a guy that put up big numbers and had highlight plays, but he didn't necessarily always do the right thing with the ball, and he didn't, his game didn't translate to winning games. And for a while, I think that was right. We saw him pound the ball way too much early in his career, but part of that was, the guys he was playing with. I think there was definitely an adjustment to playing with guys like LeBron and Kevin Love and not having to do everything like he had to do throughout most of his career. But, look, he was fantastic during the series, and like you said, I don't think he's going to get enough attention. I said that last night that, he hit the huge shot. He was fantastic all throughout this entire postseason, if you look at his numbers. And actually, he averaged more points than any LeBron teammate ever for a postseason. And people are going to, that seems surprising because he played with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. But that's how good Kyrie Irving was, averaging 27 points per game. He was really clutch, shot the ball really well. Like I said, stepped up on the defensive end. And he's still so young, so I can't wait to see what the future has in store for him.
Alex Kennedy's our guest here, basketballinsiders.com. Alex, how will you remember these finals?
I think it's LeBron just crying on the floor after winning this for Cleveland. It was seeing the fans react, in the streets and seeing how important this was for an entire city. It's one of those things where it's bigger than sports at that point. The Warriors storyline would have been great. 73 wins and then back-to-back championships and capping off, the best season in NBA history. But seeing Cleveland be able to celebrate that way and seeing what this meant to not only LeBron going back to his hometown, but what this meant for all those fans was amazing to me. I think that's one of the times where you step back. As a sports writer, obviously I'm not pulling for either team. I think that made this series very enjoyable. But last night, you had to be happy for Cleveland fans. I think whenever you saw the game was kind of wrapping up in that Cleveland in the final minute, was going, you took a step back. And it was one of those cool moments in sports where I think you're going to talk about that for a very long time.
73 wins for Golden State. What at the end of the at the end of the day, what's the story for them? How will they be remembered?
Well, had they been blown out in a series or had they lost in the Western Conference Finals when they were down 3-1 to the Thunder, I think people would have been pretty harsh and, questioned some of the things they did. Should they have pursued 73 during the regular season? Should they have rested their guys more? I think there would be a lot more questions had they lost last round or, been beaten up by Cleveland in this series. But the fact that it went down to the final minute of a Game 7, it's hard to question their approach or what happened. But, look, at the end of the day, people are going to question it. Curry obviously got injured during the postseason. Andrew Bogut goes down. Andre Iguodala had issues. You have to wonder if, that happens if they pursue that 3 record.
Alex Kennedy here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. As I love it, the NBA Finals in the books, and they jump right back. The offseason begins in the same week, so we'll get that going as well, and hopefully Alex will be able to talk some more hoops as the offseason. Always appreciate the time, pal.
Thanks a lot. Take care.